best any representative body in existence, the state legislature. People have called this the independent legislature theory, which people on the left who want their courts run by Democrats to make decisions about elections in the states. But this could not be clearer. You would not have a constitution today if the state legislatures were not involved in making the decisions about the appointment of electors to choose presidents and vice presidents of the United States. So that's number one. I want to take Pennsylvania as an example. This is very important. Stick with it. In Pennsylvania, they have an election law, like every other state, but they have a very difficult and complicated method for amending their constitution. It's one of the oldest constitutions in America, given that Pennsylvania is one of the oldest colonies. And in order to get an amendment passed in Pennsylvania, you have to go through multiple steps. And in order to change the election laws in Pennsylvania, you can't do it by statute, you have to do it by amendment to the Constitution. Now, prior to the 2020 election, Mark Elias and other lawyers working for the DNC campaign, they brought scores and scores of lawsuits and administrative actions, particularly in battleground states, to try and change the election laws to benefit their party and Joe Biden. And they largely succeeded. The Republicans were often caught flat-footed. But they forum shopped to pick states where they felt the courts would go their way and they felt the governor would, because we're talking about, in many cases, Democrat governors. In Pennsylvania, the Supreme Court has five of whom were Democrats. Radical Democrats elected mostly by the teachers union in the state of Pennsylvania. Again, the Republicans were caught flat-footed during those elections. It's very partisan, it's very political, and in sense, in my view, it's very
what are you doing?
much like the Supreme Court in Florida in 2000. Now, the problem was, by 2020, the election, the governor and the court and their surrogates were changing the election laws in Pennsylvania from what existed. They Constitution had to take too much time. They wouldn't get what they want. So you had lawyers coming in, Democrats, trying to change the laws.
Yes, I am.
The Supreme Court of Pennsylvania did it for them. Again, much like the Supreme Court of Florida in 2000. So lawsuits were brought, including a suit that was brought to the United States Supreme Court. Back in 2000, William Rehnquist was the Chief Justice, and he told the Florida Supreme Court enough was enough. And in Florida, he called the state legislature was convening to overturn effectively
because I can be.
State Supreme Court to send an alternate list of electors to the National Archives, which the governor would first have to certify. The governor being Jeb Bush, the election of his brother George Bush. And I'm going quickly, but stick with me. I'll get to this. It's very important to lay the groundwork. Well, when the case was brought to the Supreme Court out of Pennsylvania, not for identical, but similar reasons, the court wouldn't take it. Sam Alito obviously wanted to take it. We believe Thomas and Gorsuch wanted to take it based on what I read in the paper. But that's all they could get. Take it out. And so
say something, I'm giving up on you.
That had been changed by the Democrats on the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania at the behest of the governor and these Democrat litigators. So many people in Pennsylvania were furious about this, including Republicans in the state legislature, including, I guess, President Trump and lawyers working for President Trump. And so they decided, you know what we're going to do? We're going to send an alternate group of electors to the National Archives. Now, they couldn't get the Republican legislature to vote for this alternate list of electors, so it was always going to fail. The Republican legislature can send an alternate group of electors, but members of the legislature and others really don't have much of a...
Ain't no way. He knows all this right there.
But they gave it a shot. And they
Ain't no way.
When they sent their list of electors, they added in addendums to the saying that they were sending these in case legal challenges were successful. So they wanted to have a second group of electors there in case the challenge to the Supreme Court or other courts would be successful.
Yes, sir.
Does that sound like obstruction of justice to you?
Yeah.
Does that sound like obstruction
Yep.
of Congress?
Yep.
And the Electoral College vote
Yep.
to you? So what are the federal prosecutors looking at? I assume they're looking at 18 United States Code Section 1505, obstruction of proceedings before departments, agencies, and committees. And by the way, those alternate lists of electors, whether out of Pennsylvania or these other states, never got to the floor of Congress. They were never considered. They couldn't get past the archivist of the United
Elijah,
States because they have
Can
rules
you come help me in a
in the
second,
archivist's
please?
office, passed by statute and by their own practices that
Can
would
you
prevent
pull
them
this
from
up like
getting to
this?
the floor of Congress, so they were never considered.
Move
So
closer.
this criminal statute says, whoever corruptly influences, obstructs, or impedes, or endeavors to influence, obstruct, or impede the due and proper administration of the law under which any pending proceeding is being had before any department or agency of the United States,
Who's that?
or the due and proper exercise
I don't know who that is.
of the power of
Sorry.
inquiry
Can't answer that
under
question.
which any inquiry investigation is being had by either house or any committee of either house or any joint committee of Congress. All that legal gobbledygook, what does that mean? So prosecutors are hoping that they can try and figure out how to put a round peg in a square hole or a square peg in a round hole by using this obstruction statute that has nothing to do with the proceedings that I'm talking about. They see that there's an electoral college vote proceeding corruptly, that is a specific intent crime. And so what do they say? They're saying that these quote unquote fake electors were sent to Washington to overthrow the election that was won by Joe Biden. Now I give a little more context, right? To overthrow it. To overthrow it.
Yes, sir.
It
Yes.
doesn't sound like what the Pennsylvania folks did. The archivist blocked it at the door. The problem was the state Supreme Court of Pennsylvania slammed the door and would not really accept any challenges to its own changes. The U.S. Supreme Court slammed the door and wouldn't accept an appeal to fix this and enforce the federal constitution when it comes to the appointment of electors. And so they took this step, which was never going to work, and now the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Biden administration is investigating this under obstruction. This, as I said, is a specific intent crime, and as far as I'm concerned, this is preposterous. Absolutely preposterous. Even the words fake electors are intended to create a criminal notion around all of this activity. Then they're looking at, I assume, 18 U.S. Code 371, conspiracy to commit an offense or defraud the United States. And so they're looking at the president's lawyers, maybe the president himself, if they could snag him and others. And so they put out 40 subpoenas the other week. They're grabbing people's phones and so forth. If two or more persons conspiring to commit any offense against the United States or to defraud the United States, for any
Radioactive.
agency thereof, in any manner, for any purpose, and one or more of such persons do any act to affect the object of the conspiracy, each shall be fined under this title. Conspiracy? When you're bringing an open, what you believe to be legal, what you believe to be constitutional challenge, in case some of the laws
No.
succeed, and then there's seditious conspiracy, for God's sake. 18 U.S. Code, Section 2384. If two or more persons in any state or territory, in any place subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, conspire to overthrow, put down, or destroy by force the government of the United States, or to levy war against them, or oppose by force the authority thereof, or by force to prevent, hinder, or delay the execution of any law of the United States, or by force to seize, take, or possess any property of the United States, and so forth and so on, is a crime. Well, that clearly didn't occur. The roles and the responsibilities for the Electoral College are right here on the National Archives
Oh my.
website. And among other things, it says the Constitution and federal law do not prescribe the method of appointment, other than requiring that electors must be appointed on the Tuesday after the first Monday in November. After the general election, the governor of each state prepares at least 7 original certificates of ascertainment, listing the persons appointed as electors. Since federal law does not govern the general appearance of the certificate of ascertainment, the format can vary from state to state, but law requires the names of the electors chosen, the names of all other candidates for electors and the number of votes they received, It has to be signed by the governor and the seal of the state. Well, obviously in Pennsylvania, the governor did.
Oh my goodness, that's annoying.
Each state must send at least one certificate of ascertainment to the Archivist of the United States as soon as possible after the general election. And it goes on, federal law does not govern the general appearance of the certificate or vote, so the format can vary from state to state, so it's very particular. It's very particular. There was no crime here. Fake electors, obstruction, conspiracy to defraud. This was a failed attempt to send alternate electors to the National Archivist, to Congress, to be considered. In some states, should be
Mm.
but there's no specific intent to commit a crime. None whatsoever. The real offenses here occurred early on, before the general election in 2020. In Pennsylvania, where the Supreme Court changed the election laws in violation of the federal Constitution, they did similar things in Wisconsin, similar things in Georgia, similar things in other states. And that was by design of the Democrat Party, the Biden campaign, and their lawyers. And people were trying to figure out constitutional and lawful ways to respond to this. I'm not even talking about what happened on the steps of the Capitol on January 6th. I'm talking about the Constitution and the law. So for prosecutors and the U.S. attorneys...
I'm playing this Cypher PK Pit
to
thing.
myopically be looking at statutes that never were intended to apply to the Electoral College process, which is supposed to be a vibrant process, a lot of give and take, a lot of fighting and battling and so forth under the Constitution. We cannot have prosecutors who cherry pick and decide that this individual or this group of individuals or this alternate or fake list of electors and so forth, they have these specific intents.
Cypher PK Pite.
I think it could be argued that the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania had the intention of overturning an election. Or Democrat operatives, or Democrat lawyers, or Democrat officials throughout the country by changing the election law before the election in violation of the federal Constitution. Well, it's certainly worth thinking about, ladies and gentlemen. I'll be right back.
Dry eye symptoms keep driving you crazy? Inflammation in your eye might be to blame.
Time for ache and burn.
Over-the-counter eye drops typically work by lubricating your eyes and may provide temporary relief.
Those will probably pass by me.
Xiidra works differently, targeting inflammation that can cause dry eye disease.
Xiidra.
It can provide lasting relief. Xiidra is approved to treat the signs and symptoms of dry eye disease. Don't use if you're allergic to Xiidra. Common side effects include eye irritation, discomfort or blurred vision when applied to the eye, and unusual taste sensation.
Got any room in your eyes?
Ask your doctor if a 90-day prescription...
Ain't no way, dude. My game just lagged so much. I could have got a kill there. Like, you don't know how badly my game lagged right there.
I just switched to Verizon Business Unlimited. It is just right for my little business. We switched too. Unlimited premium data, unlimited hotspot data, my point of sale, on point.
Switch to Verizon Business Unlimited today from the network America relies on.
My husband and I have never been more active.
Shingles doesn't care.
I go to spin classes with my coworkers.
Good for you. Shingles doesn't care.
Ain't no way,
Because no
dude.
matter how healthy you feel,
No, stop it.
increases after age 50. But Shingrix protects.
Stop it. No, don't get that started. Please don't.
Shingrix does not protect everyone and is not for those with severe allergic reactions to its ingredients or to a previous dose.
My goodness, I just got demolished. Yo, who's the other person? Who's the other person?
The most common side effects are pain, redness and swelling at the injection site, muscle pain, tiredness, headache, shivering, fever, and upset stomach. Shingles doesn't care, but Shingrix protects. Ask your doctor or pharmacist about Shingrix today.
Say something.
When you can't watch, listen. Get the latest news, business, and news headlines on SiriusXM. Anytime, anywhere. Fox News Audio on SiriusXM. America is listening.
Nurse Marion Salvo knows a lotion this pure, Finesse solution this pure.
Yo.
Gold Bond Pure Moisture Lotion. 24-hour hydration. No parabens, dyes, or fragrances. Gold Bond. Championing your skin.
just not broke. Ice works fast to freeze your pain and your doubt. Heat makes it last, so you never sit this one out. Ice not broke. Heat lasts the pain.
For asthma, the Tri-T Mist. Symptoms
Hello.
airway smell. Tri-T Mist is clinically shown to open airways quickly.
Do I? I don't know. I don't know if I can say that.
Over-the-counter asthma inhaler and breathe easy again.
Breakthrough utterance means your utterance treatment is great. Try Zegrid OTC. It contains the leading.
I don't think I can answer that question.
You need to be designed for absorption. Get all day, all night relief with Zegrid OTC.
The internet doesn't have to be so creepy. DuckDuckGo is a free all-in-one privacy app with a built-in search engine, web browser, one-click data clearing, and more. Stop companies like Google from watching you by downloading the app today. DuckDuckGo. Privacy simplified.
I wish I.
Hello, America. Welcome back. I'm here with the great Charles Payne, who's going to try to walk us through the disaster, which is the Biden economy. As you know him from Making Money with Charles Payne, host on the Fox Business Network as well.
Do I? I already told you this. I do. Of course, I watch it. The greatest live streamer of all time.
Almost $500 billion on what they call climate change, and what I call the degrowth.
I'm getting railed from
The degrowth
behind.
movement is destroying fossil fuel industry. It's going to make sure in years out, 3, 4, 5 years, that we have low supplies of gasoline, natural gas, coal, all of it. They are spending hundreds of billions in taxes and subsidies and grants to do something the market will not do and the people do not want. They do not have an electrical grid that is built for this in any respect. Where are we headed with this?
It's an unmitigated disaster. You know, to stick with the driving theme here, we're driving off a cliff. And it's so mind-boggling because it's not rocket science. Everyone has to know what's in store for us. And by the way, if you're really not sure, we can always look over to Europe, which is a little bit ahead of us in terms of, genuflexing to the green.
No, watch him. Why not?
Including their citizens. Electricity bills for folks in Germany and France. It's just mind-boggling. The things they're dealing with, the depths of despair that they're dealing with, face us right now. Here's the sadness. The Biden administration is sort of softening the blow for those who need it the least. Right? So once again, it's this college-educated voters who are going to be getting all this extra cash to go out and buy an EV. Of course, they're going to get a lot of that money because they don't have to pay back student loans. But they got it for child care. They got it for everything else. So everyone else in this country, though, is going to suffer a mighty, mighty blow. By the way, most people already are.
Let's talk about this as a practical matter. Let's say I live in a very tall apartment complex in New York City or any major city. Where exactly am I going to go to charge up my vehicle? You know, most people are going to charge them at night when they're parked in their garage or something like that. Where am I going to go?
There'll be some charging stations on the outskirts of a place like Manhattan, along 10th Avenue, and it's just, again, it's as a practical matter, it hasn't been thought out. They will, of course, put a lot of investments into these places. Somehow, they'll figure something out, but it's not going to work. And then in more rural areas where there won't be any investment, how do you get to your job? Where do you work at Walmart? Where do you got to drop the kids off at school? Rural areas in California will be illegal to drive you certainly won't be able to buy a combustion engine car in a few years. So from a practical matter, it's suicide. It's an economic suicide, and it's maddening.
Hi, baby, what you doing?
I can say other than it's maddening. We're going to have to strip mine the entire planet to keep up with demand. And by the way, if every country that's put out their estimates for what they would like to achieve with EVs, there's not even enough raw materials available to reach those levels.
Yes.
We're playing right into the hands of the communist Chinese that control most of the world's coal.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
For these batteries. These batteries last about 10 years. They're extremely toxic. There's no place to put them, and they weigh an enormous amount. None of this has been thought out. Why do people believe that Just because you get elected to office,
Yes, sir. Yes,
you go
sir.
to Washington D.C. All of a sudden, people who don't know how to run a cash
Oh, what?
register at 7-Eleven know how to run all these industries, from healthcare, oil, whatever it is. All of a sudden, they're geniuses, they're brilliant, they know how to run all these industries. Why do we accept that?
You know, it's interesting on that. Whenever President Biden brags that he's from Delaware, where a lot of companies are incorporated, somehow that makes him a business genius. I think, Mark, we discuss this in a long way all the time anyway. These are not economic policies.
Yes, sir.
We discuss them as economic policies. This thought process, this movement, if you will, it goes back to the 1800s. As we had the Industrial Revolution and people came off the farms into cities, we started having disposable cash. In 1880, there was a book written by one of the bigger progressive thinkers out there. Of course, we know Marx and those folks are out there as well. And it's always been about control. Who controls this money? Whoever controls this new money, this newfound wealth that was actually, being distributed, people had disposable income. We could ride Ferris wheels. We could buy cotton.
How'd you know?
For the first time. We were living in sky rises. So it's always been about control. We talk about it as an economic policy. So not of them are economic experts, but they don't care about that. They have to wrap it into the veneer of economics and sell it to the public. But their goal is
Look at
something
us.
different. It is centered around the word justice. Always remember that. If you think even in recent years, you've heard about racial justice, gender justice, and now a term they use all the time is environmental justice.
What the frick you
This
want?
is a group that wants to redistribute wealth.
What do you want, little boy?
They're in their minds belong to yesteryear. And it has zero to do with economics. They don't care how much pain. has
Bye.
because of this,
All right.
and they are determined to
Bye.
make this work. And I gotta admit, they have the momentum, and right now they have the upper hand.
I think you're right on, and for them, justice is power.
Right.
You have to have power. The power has to be exercised through the Democrat Party, which is the funnel through which they operate politically now. And you hit another important point, I think. This is about ideology. Their ideology substitutes for everything else. And if it doesn't work, they don't admit it. They just double down, triple down, quadruple down. It just means we didn't do it the right way, or the wrong people are in charge. They're never circumspect. Anything that they've done, they destroy. They're a wrecking ball. So their ideology is supposed to become our reality. And this is a very, very dangerous thing because, as you point out, it's not economics. But the laws of economics have a way of turning around and biting you in the ass when you screw around with them. We'll be right back.
Do you want some more?
Wait till you see me on the downtown. Enjoy the advanced safety features of a Lexus ES. Hey! Your cut from Mars, man. Give me
Find the shelf.
Nice.
Doesn't seem to be coming clean though.
Mm.
You see that? That's when I realized I needed to start my own place. So I'm making plans for right now. Going back to my roots and opening my own restaurant. Start your plan today at Northwestern Mutual Financial Advisor and spend your life living.
You be the judge. The Nutrisystem has answered the bell with menu items that are new for 2022. Our most satisfying weight loss plan ever, including new premium meals that are big and filling, with up to 30 grams of protein.
I jumped right in and lost 127 pounds.
The new skillet meals are amazing,
And the extra protein gives you a ton of energy.
and we're bringing the taste of your favorite restaurant meals right to your home, perfectly portioned with half the calories. I can eat a burrito. I get to satisfy my craving. The secret is science-based on the latest discoveries. A high-protein, low-glycemic approach to help keep your blood sugar levels steady as you lose weight. Just like always, you get your meals and snacks delivered free with a money-back guarantee. Act now and save big with 50% off all plans.
I lost 40 pounds, 67 pounds.